They have to be.
Yeah, and we're going live. Oh, no. We're live. Okay, we're live. We're live again. Welcome to Reboot and Thrive. I was going to go falsetto, decided at the last minute, not a good idea. Anyway, we are here. This is week 2. This is about living well. And sometimes living well means staying sane. And right now, I don't know if anyone out there is having experiences like we here at our house. We have 3 boys. We have a 7-year-old. We have 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old twins. And managing through a school day, in addition to both Regina and I, my wife and I working, is really hard because we didn't start off being homeschool teachers. So with that in mind, I have brought back the fabulous, the amazing Amanda Nelson-Varnell, my favorite and only sister. Okay. And she's going to talk today about how do we, as we transition to now being teachers and homeschooling, how do we stay sane? She homeschooled her kids for, it seemed like forever, ever. And I learned a lot of wisdom from her. So I want her to just tell you a little bit about what she's also doing, because she wants to really provide some services for yourselves to help families as they're in transition. Over to you.
Thanks, Christopher. That was awesome. So yes, so my name is Amanda Nelson-Varnell. I actually live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where for the last 8 years, I have been growing a catering company called Dish to Pass. And so currently, to follow me and updates on what I'm doing, you can find me at our website, of course, dishtpass, dishtpass.com, but also on Facebook, where I'm also doing lives, kind of updating people as to what's going on with my business, but then also what's happening with this pivot that I'm doing. And so that, I believe if you just enter at, and then Dish, DISHTPASS, Dish to Pass Catering Co. pops up. So please follow me there. I would love it. And so, but prior to opening a catering company, I was actually for the better part of 15 years a stay-at-home mom of 4 children. So my kids now range in age from 26 to 17. And for 10 of those years, we were indeed a homeschool family. So I homeschooled by choice. And so I homeschooled for 5 years, took a sabbatical for a year, and then homeschooled for an additional 5 years before the kids all transitioned to what I call traditional school in January of 2012. And then I opened the business in December of 2012. So that's kind of my life. And so as all of this began to emerge mid-March, and all of a sudden there were families that were all of a sudden homeschooling. And I think it took the whole nation really by shock. And it's not because people aren't capable of it. For one thing, I thought it was interesting that you used the word homeschool teacher a couple of times. I never actually considered myself the teacher. I considered myself an administrator. Right? I was the homeschool administrator. I selected the curriculums. I definitely worked to implement those curriculums. But for the most part, children really want to learn. They love it when they have just a handle on what they're learning and why they're learning it. And I really wanted to create self-directed learners. And so for me, I did not consider myself a teacher as much as an administrator or a facilitator. I selected curriculum, which the great thing about our homeschools right now, so all of you that have been thrust into homeschooling, you actually still have teachers at your disposal, right? You can reach out to them as resources. It is not actually all on you, right? The curriculum has actually been selected for you, which has its pros and its cons. So one of the things I want to mention, and then we'll get into just talking about, kind of how it works, how it worked for me, and maybe some coaching I can give you. It's just the idea that yes, I am positioning myself now, given the years of experience that I had as a homeschool administrator and facilitator, and then as a, family dinner table specialist. I taught cooking then from 2006 until 2012 that focused around the family dinner table before I then opened this catering company, which has grown to be, we did in our first 8 years, we've done close to $5 million in revenue. So I'm pretty excited about that. Right. So growing a business. Right. And so what I want to do is be able to come alongside families now that find themselves not by choice in these arenas, and really partner with them to take advantage of this reboot that we have, to take a look at our families, the life of our family, the lifestyle of our family, how to set up a homeschool, how to create environments that really help our families thrive. So I will be in the next, I don't even know, because I've been working on it now for a couple of weeks, but I've also been making adjustments in my own business. I think you can watch, I've got some videos posted on the Dish to Pass page about those pivots that I had to make in those first couple of weeks. But I am working rapidly to get a new website up and some branding done for this whole idea of, being a family dinner table coach and a family lifestyle coach. And so if you need me, you definitely can reach out to me through the Dish to Pass page, and then look for exciting things to come in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we'll add links to that after, when we do the wrap out and we send everything out. So we'll make sure that we have those links to that.
Awesome, thanks.
So, I think where I want to start this conversation, and I think it was really important to me, I remember when you started the journey to homeschool, I was full of questions because I thought, okay, wait, why would you do that?
Right.
And the two things that you said that I want you to add some detail, add some color for everyone was, number one is, Christopher, there's a good portion of the school day that is really classroom management, that is not the focused learning. So actually, to really teach your kids at home, it takes less time, number one. Number two is, in the one thing that you have that I think is so helpful to people, and I know is helpful to myself, is set a vision for your family. And you had this vision for your family when your kids were young, that you wanted them to have a lifestyle by design. There were a lot of things that you didn't like that you said, I want to choose and intentionally do this differently. Right. And so then when you have control and you can manage that, you can then create this lifestyle design. So touch on that, because I want to try and frame it up for people, like what is really needed and what is potentially even an advantage of having this opportunity.
Sure. What I loved about having a homeschool was that I chose the calendar and the schedule. And what that meant for me, how that was translated for me, is that I did not have tired kids. Right? I had a well-rested family. We had definitely had structure. It wasn't that we didn't, but we had structure on our terms. I really didn't want an over-scheduled life. I wanted my kids to have time to just be kids, to be able to play in the backyard or go to the park, or, that we could have long, lingering dinners and friends over to play games and hang out. And all this was important to me. For years, when people would ask me, why do you homeschool? And I always felt like they were baiting me, that they wanted to hear like some
big political thing.
Yeah, political answer or something like that. I would say, well, have you ever been to the beach in September, October, or April? Because it's as beautiful as it is in July and August, and but it's not overrun with people. Like I remember so many years that we would take a late September, early October trip before fall break. We would be on these beautiful beaches in the panhandle of Florida and have them all to ourselves. Wow. And all kinds of interesting learning happened on those experiences too, right? So the great thing about homeschooling is all of a sudden life becomes your classroom. And I think you're seeing that with your kids. Oh, yeah. You're doing this crazy bread baking, and you've got these chickens now that they're old enough, they're laying, you've got eggs coming in every day, and they're creating, they branded their business, what is it? Chicken Bros?
ATX Chicken Bros.
ATX Chicken Bros. And they are now, they've got their side hustle of eggs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So all of these are actual real life learning opportunities. I mean, you could have Jacob keeping the books on these chickens, right?
Oh, trust me, he is.
Yeah,
make sure we're not taking any eggs.
And so all of a sudden life becomes your classroom. And so one of the things that was always important to me and so I actually sent my oldest son to kindergarten, and I'm very glad that I did. I was pregnant with my third child at the time. And while Jack was in kindergarten learning how school worked, right? And he had an amazing kindergarten teacher. In fact, we're still good friends with her. And it's exciting to me to see where her life has gone. And as Jack is now 26. But as he was learning how school worked, I was realizing like every day at nap time. So I had a 3-year-old and I had a newborn, and at 2:15, 2:30 every day, you know where I was? In Carline. So we weren't getting great naps. We weren't in that time from the time we got home about 3 or 3:15 from picking him up from school until dad got home from work at 5:36, 6:37. Some days could be hellish because kids need rest in the afternoon.
Right.
Moms need rest in the afternoon, and probably dads need rest in the afternoon, right? So the whole idea, I began to examine like what would a homeschool actually look like. And for me, it was creating an environment that was educational in nature, like choosing resources, particular, magazine subscriptions for our kids and books that we were acquiring, art supplies, all kinds of things like that. So you're creating this atmosphere of education, board games, video games, movies, all of that, accumulating things so that as our homeschool had a school day from 8 to 4, there were activities and things that the kids could use for self-directed learning that felt like they weren't in school.
Right.
Then would afford me opportunities to work on the things that I was working on. I've always had a variety of side hustles. You know this. I was born an entrepreneur. And so I always had things that I was involved in and could do during those times. And some of it even was just taking care of younger children, because we did, end up with a family of 4 children. So but it created self-learners. Go ahead.
And so what I want to say, so that, I think that's an important framework in the sense that is something that motivated and inspired you to become a homeschooler. And I think that what we can, for people who are, shocked into this, or this is happening to you, that is the opportunity to put on those lenses and say, wait, let's take a step back and let's look at this. And then the other thing, though, I just want to try and start leading you into, some of these things that we talked about, right, is, and really tease it out, is talking about how do you now switch this home that was really around relaxing. We'd come home and we'd have this relax area into the environment, for education. And how do we need to think about transitioning that? Because now we do have home, relax, decompress, and school together.
So I do think that, and we've talked about this on a previous segment you and I did, I've talked about it on some segments I've been doing on the Dish to Pass page, and that is the whole idea of definitely administering a lot of grace to yourselves while you're walking through this, because you still are probably going through some stages of grief, which would include bargaining, right? You're like, why are we doing this homeschooling thing? I didn't ask for this. This wasn't, And so I think the idea, though, of kind of taking some time to push pause and getting flipping your perspective and beginning to see this as an opportunity and not something that was just thrust on you that you have to choke down, because it really, really is and can be an opportunity for you to just fall in love with your family again, And so it can be amazing. But in my mind, it involves a little bit of planning and a little bit of structure. And so one of the things I offer up is the idea of creating zones in your home. So like you have zones where they're play zones. So when the kids are pushed, like you're saying, okay, you need to go into, XYZ room, and maybe it's their bedroom, maybe it's a den, maybe it's a basement. That is where they play. Where's the learning zone? Where's the work zone? And for me, it was our kitchen table. we had a kitchen table that would seat 8. So it was kind of a breakfasty room, kind of dining room thing. And I would post up at one end of the table, and I had my computer and my work there that I also was doing while they were posted up doing their schoolwork, right? So creating zones, I think definitely having a structure to your day. You should have your own schedule. You know, your partner may have their schedule, and then each child, depending on their age and how much interaction their schools are requiring them to have, because I know a lot of schools are still having some virtual classes or class meetings, that you actually need to have, I think, written schedules at this point of visual. So many children especially are visual, you know, where you might just have that tacked up on, you know, the refrigerator or something, so you see what the schedule is. But building in downtime for the kids. No expectation that from 8 to 4 or 9 to 4 or 8 to 3 that they're going to be involved in something that looks like sitting at a desk writing. Impossible and unnecessary torture for all of you, right? Things like recess, so important. Yes. Lunch, so important. And then an afternoon break from like 2 to 4. We used to call it siesta. As my kids got older and were reading independently, they did what we called SSR, sustained silent reading. So they had books that they were responsible for reading, not during that whole 2-hour period, mind you, but then also just resting. And that might mean that they're playing with, you know, maybe they're playing with race cars or with dinosaurs or, you know, and right now I'm talking kind of about a young elementary age student.
Right.
For an older student, it could be reading. I would recommend that it's not necessarily video games. If it is a video game, that it definitely has to have an educational component to it. But the whole idea, though, of them learning like how to edit videos or writing scripts, you know, my older boys, when they got to that like 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, during that siesta time, a lot of times would work on scripts, and then later they'd like make movies and, you know, things like that. So you can come up with some creative uses, but that is quiet time. And for a parent who's working from home, that's golden. That's golden, because maybe you're getting up early at 5 or 5:30 to work before your kids get up. So that might be your power nap time and a time that you do some yoga, some meditation. Maybe you work out during that time. Or it could actually just be, if you're getting up and going to bed about the same time that your family is, maybe that's just, you know, an hour and a half for you to really concentrate and get your head down in whatever the work is that you're responsible for, that's hard for you to do when you also have kids, you know, surrounding you.
So we covered a lot. And so I'm going to reframe a couple of things that we talked about. So number one was, we talked about in the house having zones, having a school zone, having a play zone. And so having that area that you set up, that it is the school. And then I think you also then talk, because there's a time component to that as well, right? And so here is school time. Let's actually manage school time. And here's the area we're going to do that. But I know, especially for, you know, our family too, with multiple kids, we do have, and it's pretty straightforward. Kitchen is where we're doing a lot of the schoolwork. If somebody is on play, they either go into, we have a playroom, or they go outside, and it's either or, and they have that option. And so, and then there's the time scheduling. Talk for a little bit, when you talked earlier about time scheduling, how did you really look at, you know, seeing the workload of your kids and managing that throughout the day?
So for me, it was always about the core subjects. So I read a book early on, and I should have dug it out for today because I forget the title. I remember the woman's name was Deborah Bell. I do remember that. But she had a book and she spoke about homeschooling, that there were certain subjects that were very systematic. They layered upon each other. Those had to be addressed daily. Right. And so, and there were actually a number of days per grade. So like a kindergarten doesn't have to work on schoolwork actually every day, but that's probably a controversial statement, so we'll steer away from that. But the idea is that there are certain subjects that layer upon each other and have to be done consistently. Right. Then there are subjects like social studies and science and history that can be learned randomly and sporadically. Like you could have a first grader, a third grader, and a fifth grader all learning about your state's history at the same time. They could all be learning about how presidential elections work. In fact, that would be a great time. You know, now's a great time to do that at the same time, right? But it doesn't matter where in their education life that they learn these things. But so for me, always, every day, it was starting with the hard thing first, which was always math and language arts. Both of those are layered. And so we would always have, you know, they do their math work, they would do, you know, spelling words, they would do grammar, all of that. But in reality, that was handled in 4 hours or less. If it went over that, something was wrong.
Right.
No, and it typically was, the expectation was just too great because you're going to be exhausted. I mean, like you can't do that. You can't do that as a parent, and the kids certainly can't do that. And so the great thing is too, is you do have teachers at your resource right now too, that you can talk to about what their expectation is. But really, we typically, our core work, and our kids started usually by 9 o'clock, they were really engaged in the hard work of the day, but they were finished by lunchtime with those core subjects. And then the afternoons were spent working on things like, you know, if they had a creative writing paper, or if they were learning about a particular topic in history, or working through a world history book or something like that.
Right. It was more the free time. And then, I mean, again, that's transitioned to more of the siesta. Everyone's doing independent working. Everyone should work quietly, which I think is, great practice just to have.
Sure. And so, then it parlays though to the family dinner table, which is what we talked about the other day, because then the follow up to all of this self-learning is that when you're having dinner together, the other parent, so if you were the parent involved with kind of administering the school day, then the other parent is asking informed questions about what the kids are learning. So I understand that you're learning about, state history of Texas. So what can you tell me? What did you learn about Texas today that you didn't know yesterday? Right. And it's this whole atmosphere of education where it's expected that we're all life learners, right?
Right. And I think that is, and I think we believe that that's a valuable life skill. Like we as brother and sister, we as a family, like we believe that that's a valuable life skill, is being lifelong learners. And then bringing that in as that environment of education in the home. And so one of the things though, that what I was going to say that we talked about is, let's talk about, we shared this too, is we have, as a family, we have 2, what we're calling daily resets, where it's after breakfast. I usually have my own work time in the morning, and then I meet the family after the kids have eaten breakfast, and we just go for a walk. And my wife and I get a chance to chat. The kids can run around, do whatever, and we're social distancing. We're not in there. Sometimes dogs don't know how to social distance, another story. But we go and reset, and then we do that also after dinner. And that is just our blowout. And I tell the kids, like, and sometimes I get a little feedback from my wife, like, scream, like, let it out. Like, this is where you get the yah-yahs out. You yell, you scream, but those are family resets for us. It's so valuable.
And when you think about, like, I remember as a child in elementary school, when you got to school, you did get to play on the playground for a little bit before you lined up to come into class, right? And then you had that mid-morning recess where you got to go outside and either play on the monkey bars or, play dodgeball or do all these things. And again, get those yah-yahs out before you came in for another time of learning before lunch. And then you had lunch and you had recess, or you might have PE. But again, another way to get some energy out before you sat down and had your final set of learning. And then, I mean, it was different for everybody, but I know when we were little, we would come home and then we would rest for a while before it was time to get ready for dinner. And I think looking at that and how to manage that as a family now, right? And it does take buy-in from all the participants. And so the idea of having family resets, family meetings, like a weekly family meeting to just say, okay, this is what this week looks like. Mom's got this project that's due on Thursday. Dad's responsible for this, this, and this with what he's doing at work. Sister, you have your report due, Wednesday morning. Would you like to present it to us Tuesday night at dinner so we can see, you can plan out the week, right? And then put those high spots in. We talked about this the other day at the family dinner table video, but Friday night is make your own pizza nights, right? Yep. Build those in and build those up. But I think what we're going to see coming out of this are families that are stronger than they've ever been.
Yes.
Because we actually have a choice right now to lean in and decide, how do we want to structure our lifestyles? And will we really want to go back to that frenetic pace that so many people had, with so many activities for their children and so many activities for themselves and so much travel for work and all of these things? Do we really, we'll just be able to revisit that and establish what works best for us as individual families. And this is just we can flip the switch and say that this is really a good, opportune time and not look at it as, a negative time.
Well, and I think what you just talked about, the very last thing there is, because we talked, number one, reset, figure out where your family's going to reset, even midday, go and take a walk after lunch. Like we're not trying to tell you what's right for your family. In fact, the one sentence that if anything, my sister has ingrained in my brain, I'm going to tell you right now, and it's not what you used to call me when I was a kid. It is.
Oh my God.
Exactly. It is, do what's right for your family.
That's
your
right.
family is a unique collection of unique individuals.
Yes.
Our job as parents is to figure out what's right for our family. So figure out what's right for your family for a reset.
And it's a beautiful time of identifying who you are as a family as well, right? Like my married last name Varnell. So we were like, who are we as Varnells? And then it wasn't even enough to be a Varnell. It was her dad, Phil Varnell. So his family, like, what does this family, right? And how are we unique? And how do we move in the world? And it's this idea of creating identity for your family, which is a little off topic from homeschool, but it all kind of weaves together, because we have time now to discuss these things.
Well, and this is actually where I was I think to me, this is the biggest crossover point that you've brought up in these two sessions, which is, and I think that you actually just hit on it. And I would say, I think an awesome, giveaway to your audience, to my audience would be, what is maybe a PDF that people can sit down and say, how do you really get your family vision together?
Okay.
And then think about a structure for family meetings, because you brought this up twice. And that is, for the dinner table, it was really set the expectation, bring everyone together, bring your littles, bring your mediums, bring your bigs.
That's right.
Sit down, have a conversation that says, here's what we want the dinner table to be like. And then, right now, and I remember as we were preparing for this, right, you really said, this needs to be part of a family meeting. And so I would argue that if there's
one today, you wanted to argue with me. I'm not arguing.
You're not arguing. No, I would actually really, say that, what I would distill out of today, the takeaway is that this concept of the vision for your family, and in doing this, vision document and having regular family meetings and setting everybody up and checking in with everybody and creating that environment to really do a reboot to thrive. I think that's the most important thing out of these two sessions.
All right. Well, we'll get those PDFs together then.
Let's do it.
I can do it.
I'll co-author it with you.
I'm okay.
I got ideas.
Thank you.
I'm smart.
No,
anyway.
I do. I mean, I know as a small business owner, and having this all thrust on me, something I've spent the last, better part of really 9 years building, have the whole rug jerked out from underneath me, this catering business, and just figuring that Reboot. I cannot imagine what it feels like to be a working family where everybody's tracking, right? Like the kids are doing great in school and you're both working great on your careers. And sure, there's these issues of home life that maybe we could structure a little bit differently, but for the most part, our lives seem to be working. To all of a sudden have this, you know, hard reboot, right, happen to us. Yeah, I think it can be very disconcerting. And so what I would love to do is, right, to make myself available to come alongside of families that are going through this and just use exactly some of the actual real life experience that I gained in, you know, over 10 years in the trenches, and even more than that, really 20 something years of doing family and doing small business, and just this idea of coming and systemizing what you're doing, having the conversations. You know, we haven't even really tackled, which is a whole other conversation, is when you don't have a solid buy-in.
Yeah.
You're a co-parent. And I'm
Yeah.
hearing a lot of that lately too. And so I will be speaking about that, maybe not here with you on Wealthward, but I will be speaking about that. Like what happens when you're not getting buy-in from the co-parent, or if you're a single parent, right? How, because the bones of what are happening are the same. You still have to have the same, you know, go through the same worksheet, have the same conversations with yourself or with somebody else. It's just, how do you do that in the face of what looks like a little additional adversity? So, but yeah, so that's it.
Wow. Well, we covered a lot, and good. I am going to just roll it up. I'm going to roll it up. That's what I do. Synthesizer. So, where do we go? Create an atmosphere of learning. Create an atmosphere of learning or education. Which was it?
Either one.
Yeah. Okay. And I think what you really, you know, meant by that, and what I took away is, you know, having, whether it's educational games or educational moments around things in the house, make it about learning and let that permeate everything that you're doing. I think that.
Absolutely. And save the fun stuff. It's not that kids can't watch fluffy TV or shows that don't, but have that be the special treat, right? Have that be the special treat.
And then we talked about, so we're making the home the environment of learning, and then we're moving into zones. We're creating some zones, where the school zone, the play zone, and that can be physical spaces. That can also be spaces that are used for time. We talk a lot about the kitchen. We have the kitchen as our learning zone during the day, and then we break it down and we'll have a lunch. People move things aside, we eat, then we bring it back, maybe do a little stuff in the afternoon, but figure out your zones and then your schedule. And I think that, you know, what we talked about is the learning, you know, needs to be dispersed with some recesses, some breaks. And I think the idea that I love, and I've actually always claimed as I was in the workforce going into the office, like I wanted to live the siesta lifestyle. So now we have the opportunity to
create siesta in your day.
Create a siesta. Let's live the siesta lifestyle. Let's bring that back.
I know. It really is an opportunity to embrace things that you've always thought, I wish we could do that. Well, guess what? Now you can.
Yes. And then, you know, kids, I think the other thing we talked about a little bit, but I want to highlight, kids need time out, and so do parents too. And so I think, you know, having a divide and conquer, sharing this between parents and making sure that parents, like sometimes, you know, and I've seen this, kids get crispy, parents get crispy. Sometimes a parent needs a hard time. Go
exactly.
Take an hour or two, get yourself together, go do your own reboot, and we need to manage it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, knowing who needs the timeout, because sometimes you give the whole family a timeout because you're actually the one that needs the timeout.
That's right. And then at the end, I think what translated to both conversations about the dinner table is create a vision for your family, understand, like, how do you really want to redefine your family now? And then, you know, have some family meetings, set expectations around, you know, what this environment of learning is going to be, what the home life is going to be, talk about schedule, talk about wins, and then also, you know, move that into the dinner table as well, where we can all be sharing and having a good time together. I just have to say, Amanda, I always have such a phenomenal time. I could talk about this forever, because the one thing that you have is you have an incredibly beautiful vision, and you've had the opportunity to create that in your life with your kids. And it's something that we all have an opportunity now to participate in that. And so I think your message does need to be heard. Thank you so much for joining us again 2 days this week on Reboot and Thrive. And to everyone here, please, you know, again, I'm going to include Amanda's information so that you can find her and you can connect with her and understand how she can lean in and help your family. And then for us here at Wealthward, please join us, Wealthward Capital, please join us tomorrow, where we're going to be talking to Omar from Zippy Doo, how you know, now is the time to actually rediscover play. Like, how do we as adults rediscover the attitude of play that maybe has gotten a little, you know, jaded by busy schedules or other things, or hardened, etc. So excited about that. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please like this video, you know, and follow us here on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.